Revelation 2743. From the 17th of May 1943. Spiritual Law. God Denier. Teaching this. If you bear in mind people's spiritual law, which expresses itself in increased lack of love, incomplete lack of faith, and in a way of life on a purely material basis, you will also recognize the necessity of remedying this spiritual law as soon as you are informed of the actual meaning and purpose of earthly life. Consequently, the knowledge of this is necessary insofar as that the human being will then understand God's reign and activity, that he will then recognize that only God's love underlies all events, no matter how painful and seemingly unbearable for people. The further the human being distances himself from God through unkindness, the more incomprehensible it is to him that a deity should direct world events, because, in his opinion, it testifies to neither wisdom nor love. And therefore he completely rejects God. He gives up all faith in an omnipotent, loving and wise Creator. And it is difficult to teach such a person otherwise. It is difficult to make him understand the meaning and purpose of divine activity as long as he recognizes nothing at all but what is visible and tangible to him. The suffering of the present time certainly allows some people to find their way back to God, but far more lose their faith completely, and that out of ignorance, out of lack of knowledge of their actual purpose of life on earth. But they themselves are to blame for their ignorance, because they live without love, because they are of a wrong will and do not use their vitality in the right way, in serving neighborly love. For otherwise they would be instructed by the Spirit within themselves, their thinking would be right, they would be mentally pointed to their actual purpose and also recognize the deplorable state caused by people's lack of love. The human being's wrong thinking, which is instilled in him by dark forces, hardens him more and more, and yet he cannot be helped in any other way than by pointing out his wrong way of life, the consequences of it for him and his soul as well as earthly for the whole of humanity, which is of the same mind as he is. He can only be made aware of these consequences and recognize the truth from them that the announced earthly events will also come to pass, so that he will now find an explanation for the great suffering which affects the earth, and he will now mentally approach the teachings. This is the only possibility to draw his attention to the coming great event, although he can still find a natural explanation for it if he is completely hardened in mind. However, his wrong thinking cannot be guided correctly by force, it must be left to his will to connect the events with a deity who guides them. Faith in God can be gained through profound suffering, through an extraordinary intervention of God which expresses itself in the creation of nature. But everything can also pass the human being by unimpressively who has completely renounced God, and then there is no other possibility for him to bring him to realization. He is lost for this earth period and must begin a new redemption epoch. He is so far from God that he has to go through the process of development again. His will, which he used wrongly in his free state, has to be bound again, because otherwise no redemption is possible for him. Amen.